Hello everyone, my name is Tracy and today I'm going to be showing you how to make this cute little autumn landscape. I will be showing you step by step how to create this watercolor painting, so even if you think that you can't draw, you will be able to draw and paint this by the end of this video. So the first thing I usually do with these paintings is I start with simple shapes. And what we will do here is start with our circular background. And I would recommend that you start drawing very lightly with your pencil, so that way if you don't end up erasing your lines, then they will show not so much through your watercolors. So we'll start with our circular shape right here. I'm going to go right about there because I'm planning on having my house here. I think I want to have a little cloud right here, sort of going out of the painting. So then you will definitely want to erase this line right here. And I'll reinforce that. I will have my roof line here. It's sort of an odd rectangular shape. I'm going to put the chimney here. And on my chimney, I'm going to have my bird looking in this direction. Next, we have a square-ish shape for the main part of the house. We're going to put our shingles on, and those are roughly shaped. No perfection required here. Going to do our door with a little bit of a decoration above it. Going to do our windows up here. And I'm going to have it on a little bit of a hill here. And then I'm going to, I think, wrap that around and have that come down like that. Erase that part there. Another little tree here. Going to have a little bit of a pathway, maybe leading down like that. And going to erase that part there. So sorry, I just hit my water bottle. If you're wondering what that sound was. Going to have a set of roundish kind of trees here. And I think that will be it. This is going to be a relatively simple composition. And let's start painting. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is fill in the sky area with just some clean water, but I'm actually using some dirty water from my previous video. And that will lay down our wet base, so we can just drop in some blues. And that is called the wet on wet technique. Let's drop in the blue. I am using cobalt blue, and I use 3 colors in my palette just for simplicity's sake, and also teach you a bit of color mixing. So this is cobalt blue, this is yellow, and this is permanent red. But whatever colors you have, if you have favorite colors, by all means, go ahead and use those. All right, here we go with our sky. So I'm just going to drop in some of that. I'm going to add a little bit more water to it because I want it to be a bit more diluted. Okay, so down at the bottom, I'm going to have less blue, closer to the horizon. And as you go up farther in the sky, the blue is going to be darker. Going to add a little bit more blue up there, just to darken it up. And these whiter spaces here could also indicate clouds. Also, if you want to do this a different way and not draw your clouds in first, but if you want to lift your clouds out, you can take some clean water and you dab it in where you want your cloud to be. And then you take some paper towel and you can lift it out that way. And then that is how you make watercolor clouds. Nice fluffy watercolor clouds. But I'm going to paint that back in because I already have my whimsical clouds here. I'll leave a little bit of lightness there. Okay, I'm going to drop a little bit more blue in because I want it to be somewhat darker. And there. You can even add a bit of red up here and then make it slightly purple. You add that to your blue. More blue-based, though, than red. And then add that up here. And that will give you quite a contrast for your sky. And I'll put a little bit more there, just so that way the clouds pop out a little bit more. And smudge that in. There we go. So add a little bit more to the edges just because that'll give it some more definition. And don't want to add too much water at this point because then it'll cause those cauliflower shapes. Don't know if you've ever noticed that or not, but that's what happens when your paint starts to dry too much and then you add plain water. You will get those shapes in your painting. But if you like that kind of effect, by all means, go ahead and do that. There we go. Okay, so that is our sky. I'm going to wait for that to dry before I do our clouds. I'm still not sure what color those are going to be. I might do them a light pink. But in the meantime, while we have this blue on our palette, this purpley blue in our palette, I'm going to add some yellow to it. And we're going to create a green. And I'm going to clean my brush a little bit there. And I'm going to lay down some water here so we can do the same thing for our grass. Okay, and as you can see, there's already some green on the brush still because I didn't clean it quite well enough. And that's okay. If you ever want a more diluted, less saturated paint in your painting, and that's the color, if you color that you just used, if that's the color that you want to be less saturated, dip your brush in water, wipe it off a little bit on the jar, and then you lay it in, and that you'll get a lighter version of the color that you just used. Okay, so we are going to take some of that darker green and we're going to pop it right here in the back, and then a little bit more on the top here. Right there, I'm going to add, I want this to be darker, so I'm going to add some more blue to our mixture here. And then lay that in there. Now, usually, perspective-wise, your lighter colors, as you go farther into the distance, this will be a lighter green. And then as you get closer to the forward part of the painting, that will be a darker green. But I'm going to do the opposite because it's a whimsical painting and I can do that. I can break the rules. But normally this would be a lighter green if you want to be accurate according to perspective and distance. And this would be the darker green here. But I'm not doing that today. So this is looking, oh yes, I see what that is. Okay. I'm just blending that out a little bit because it was a little bit too noticeable. All right, so I'm going to, I think this is going to be an autumn time of year in the painting. So I'm going to do these trees in oranges and yellows. And the oranges will complement the blue background. Because orange is the complementary of blue and blue is the complementary of orange. And complementary colors make the most contrast in your painting. So if you want something really to pop, you would lay in the complementary color of whatever color you're using, and that will really provide a big contrast in your painting. Okay, so lay down some yellow. You'll notice I don't clean my palette very much from painting to painting. I tend to use just whatever's already left over in there, which is nice about watercolors. And sometimes I will put the same colors sort of in the same areas, but you know, as you can see here, I used red in this area instead of up here where I would have normally done. And here I've put the green over the yellow and the red from a previous painting. So yeah, but if you like to keep your palette clean, that is your choice. So we're laying in a yellow-orange tree there, and this one is sort of the similar tree, so I'm going to put that one there also. And I'm also going to use this color over here in one of these trees to provide balance in the painting. So let's see here. I think I'm going to do it over here in the bigger tree. So you can, if you wanted to, have laid down the water first and then put in this color. I'm just putting it in directly. And I'm going to add a little bit more red to it on the palette, so that way I can have my shadow side over here. All right, and then we're going to put a little bit of that there on the left side of the trees while the paint is still wet. All right, a little bit more red. There we go, because we do want it to actually have a contrast here. There we go. Okay, I'm happy with that. So while we're waiting for that to dry, I'm going to start working on our house. And I think And this is going to be a greenish, dark greenish roofed house with just a very light wash of yellow as the main part of the building, and then the accents could be even orange-ish, or they could be green. Okay, so let us add some yellow to the blue that we already have on the palette. And I'm going to add some dirty water to the top of my roof here. Do the chimney. And let's do the door the same color and these little decorative. Next, we are going to do, I'm going to rinse my brush. And with the dirty paint still in it, it should be a little more diluted than what I just did here. I'm just going to do a very light wash of yellow just to sort of indicate some sort of color in that building. I don't want much more than that. I'm going to add a darker green to the top of the roof. So we're going to take some blue, add that to our yellowish green mixture. And drop that on the left side, which is where our shadow is going to be, but I don't like the looks of that color. And probably if you want to test out what your color is going to be before you use it on your painting, you just take a scrap piece of watercolor paper and you do this, and that way you don't do what I just did, which was add a color that I'm not quite pleased with. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift that out and use a paper towel here. I can actually even just dab it straight on the painting like that, and that lifts out most of the color. So now I'm going to start that roof part over again. So I don't like that green. I'm going to add a little bit of red to it to sort of gray it down. So let's do that. So now we've got sort of a burgundy color here, and I need to add a little bit more blue to that to get a purpley color, which I'm then going to add a little bit of the yellow to make it yellow and purple, make brown-ish color. Might look a little bit gray and stuff like that. So I'm going to try that color instead. I'm going to dab, I feel like I have a little bit too much paint on my brush, so I'm going to dab it to get some of that off. So I have less paint on my brush. I'm also going to test this. Oh, now I have no paint on my brush, so we'll try that again. I'm going to test this color to see what we've got here. And that's sort of a browny gray. So that is okay. And now I have no more paint on my palette, because I just used it all up. So we're going to start that over again. And usually when you mix the complements of any color, you will get a brown. So blue and orange will make a brownish type color. Right now I've just made green, and then we'll add red, which is its complement, to the green, and we will get a brownish color. Now I've added more red than green to that, so that's why we've ended up with a burgundy color instead of a brown. So I'm adding a bit more blue to that. And then I'm going to add a little more red because it's not quite purple. And purple and yellow make brown. So let's do that. So that's our yellow brown. It needs to be a little more grayish. Okay, I think I'm happy with that. It'll be a different color than this one here. It'll be more of a color that I was interested in for the roof than this over here. Okay, so with that on my brush, we are going to try this again. And that was a lesson in color mixing. If you have a limited amount of watercolors, then you can make virtually any color out of red, yellow, and blue, which are the primary colors. Okay, so I'm lifting a little bit of color out of our door here, and I'm spreading a little bit of that over to that side because I want this side to be darker. And add a little bit more. Okay, and then that brownish color, I'm going to add a little bit more red to that. So that way we can make our pathway up to the door. I'm going to just test that out. That's fine. It's like a sandy kind of color. And we're going to put that there and drag it over there. Okay, you can even use that for the trunks if that was, if you want to do your trunks like that. And as you can see, this tree color sort of blended into our background sky because that was still wet, but that's okay. That could be another tree or something in behind it. So while we're waiting for this to dry, I'm going to paint our clouds. And those are just going to be a light purpley pink, I think. Sorry, that rhymed. Maybe just purple. Pink might be a little bit odd for the color combinations here. Okay, so I'm rinsing my brush and I'm going to dab that off a little bit here. Now I'm going to test this color to see if that might be what I want, and I think that will be good. I'm just going to do the undersides of the clouds, but I'm going to make them wet first, so this will spread into the top part a little bit. Okay, so back to the water, and then dab that off a little bit. I don't want these too wet. So put that there, and do that one there. We add our paint primarily to the bottom, and then that will bleed up into the top a little bit. So the darker area of a cloud is usually always the bottom. Now, if you want these to be a little more white, did not have to put water up here. If you don't want stuff blending up into the top of your clouds, then these will stay white. And then you could always, after this part is dry, you can come back with your color and make a very defined edge here on the side if that's something that you wanted to do. I would just want my clouds to be fluffy. Okay, so what you can also do is lift some of this color out, and I'm just going to take a bit of my paper towel and do that. See, it only takes a dab, and then you've got the top of your white fluffy clouds. All right, while we are waiting for that to dry, the last parts that we need to do are our windows and these other two trees. The windows, I'm going to do orange, just to have a little bit of a glow in there. I'm going to take a bit of my yellow and my red and clean my brush. And then while the orange is still in there, although it's diluted, just going to put that in. I don't want a very big glow here. Just an indication that those are lit up. Now we're going to do the final two trees here. I think one will have some red and maybe one will be a little a yellowish color. So while we have our orange here, I'm going to add red to it. I'm going to clean my brush, still have the red paint in it, and wet that down, that middle tree, and dry my brush because it has too much water in it. And then I want some of the red on the side here, like that. Don't want it to be too red because that will really make your eye move to that part of the painting. If that's what you want to do, then yeah, you use red and that will do the job. So I'm going to tone that down a little bit with some of that orange instead. And then this other one's going to be yellowish orange. And pop that in there. Clean off my brush and just do a very faint indication of a yellowish tree. Put a little bit more here to make it stand out. And I want these sides of the trees to stand out a little bit more. So these are dry now, so I can add another layer to it, which is called glazing. And then I can be very definitive about the kind of line that I want on there. So that will be a very harsh line. If you want that to be smoother, you would then take some water and a little bit of water, dry off your brush, and just smooth that out like that if you don't want such a harsh shadow. But if you want a very definitive shadow, that's what you do. You don't wipe that out. And we'll put that there. Just a little bit more. And add that to these trees. Needs to be a bit darker. Okay, so I think I'm going to add a little bit more to the windows so that way it's very cohesive. And that is going to be the all the painting that I'm going to do on this one. The next step is going to be the inking. I have let the painting dry completely, which is something that I want to do before I ink it. Because if the painting was still wet, and even though I'm using a Uniball Vision Needle waterproof permanent black marker pen, size 0.5 millimeters, if the painting was still wet and I was doing the inking with this, it would still bleed into the painting. So I wait for the painting to dry completely. If you want to do your inking before you paint, you can also do that. I prefer to do it afterwards because that gives me a crisper, clearer, darker line. And I've noticed that when I ink first and then I paint, it sort of dulls the line, and I have to go back over my line. So I figured just for the sake of saving some time, I ink afterwards. But if you want to ink first and then paint, that is your choice. So we are going to go over our ink lines here, and then our final step will be adding the white highlights with a white acrylic paint pen. So let's start with our background here. And if you want a wobblier line, hold your pen towards the back. That gives you less control over the line. If you want a more controlled line, hold it closer to the front. and then you can have a straighter line. Sometimes I want that for the background, but as you can see, it's slightly wonky, which is fine because this is a whimsical painting. So I tend to hold my marker towards the back so that way I'm not blocking the painting while I'm filming, and you can actually see what I'm doing then. So it's sort of a win-win situation. It gives me wonky lines and it lets you be able to see what I'm doing. Okay, so let's do the chimney here. And then our roof. I've made this a very simple house. As you can see, I was holding that towards the back, and then I sort of made an extra line there when I was moving it. So that is something that you might want to keep in mind as far as control over your pen goes. Okay, on to the bird. I have not given this bird a name yet, so if you have any ideas for a name for this bird, drop that in the comments below. I would love to hear what you might come up with. I do always enjoy hearing from my viewers. I read all the comments, and I do enjoy reading the comments, so if you would like to ask me a question or tell me something that you really like about these paintings, please leave me a comment. It helps to boost engagement on my videos, which helps to spread them out to a wider audience, so more people like you who enjoy watching these videos can actually see them. They get the recommendations on their homepage and stuff. So if you like and subscribe and comment on my video, then that helps the whimsical world of watercolor to be spread out to more people. So thank you for your interaction with my videos. And I've just done some squiggling lines there to indicate, you know, if you want, you can do some sort of leaf indications as well by doing like this. Just a few upside down U's, and then that's an indication of some leaves. Or you can just put in the branches of the trees as well. So now that I've done that, I kind of don't want to deviate from the potential pattern of the painting. So I'll just do a few more of those lines. And we will add our hill here. And we'll join these two up. And you can either put a line here or not. I think I'm just going to leave it for the moment. I will put my path in there. And now on to the white highlights. I am using a white Posca, Uniposca pen, size 0.7 millimeters, which is a finer tip. And it's an acrylic paint pen. You shake it and you get a scrap piece of paper and you push on that until you get some paint coming out. Now sometimes the paint coming out can be quite a lot, so you would definitely want to do this on a scrap piece of paper. I once did it on a painting just because I was running out of paint, and I did that, and then I had this huge blob of paint on my painting. It was an abstract painting, so you know I was able to make use of it. But yeah, that could have been disastrous on something like this, unless it's a cloud in the sky or something. All right, so I'm going to choose which side I want my highlights on, and since I've decided that my shadows are on the left side, I'm going to highlight on the right side, and we'll just add a little bit of white to these clouds. I'm going to give the bird an eye, and if my hand's not too shaky, I can do that pretty good. but the more I find that I try to hold it in control, the more shaky it can get. So I'm adding my white to the side. You can't really see it but on film, but in the finished painting, it does make quite a difference. And then you can always go back over it once the first layer is dried, and that will make your whites more defined. So I'm just adding a little bit of whites to the sides of those trees, a little bit in the window to make them glow, and a little bit to the decorations above the door and on that side of the door. And then sometimes I might add it to the hill. And you could, you know, do a little scribble on the path or something. And then I will add it to these sides of the trees. And you can do dots, or you can do scribbles or a straight line, whatever you'd like. And then I'll add a little bit to the top of the hill here, just for a bit of definition. And I am going to call this painting done. Now, if you enjoyed this painting, please let me know in the comments below. Feedback is very helpful to me. And if there's any particular part of this painting that you enjoyed, please let me know, so that way I know what I can do for future videos, and whatever you might be interested in, let me know that also. That's very helpful. I hope you enjoyed this painting. I'm going to wish you a world of whimsy, and I will catch you in the next painting.